Today I'm going to be replacing my neighbor's iPhone XR screen. And it looks like later I'm going to be getting myself 3 McDoubles. Thanks, neighbor. Whenever I fix a phone, it's always fun to hear people's stories of how it broke. And in this case, my neighbor said that she got a brand new puppy and it bit the screen, which then caused it to go crazy like you see here. Surprisingly, the touchscreen still works, and I was able to even take pictures. She said she's been using it like this for about a week, which is pretty amazing because after 30 seconds of looking at it, I started to hallucinate and get really sleepy. The iPhone XR is one of the easiest iPhone screens to replace, especially because you can get a full assembly kit like this on Amazon, which has all the tools you'll need. I'll have the screen and tools linked below in the description. To get started on the screen, the first step is to take out the SIM card, then remove the 2 screws near the charging port using a 0.8 pentalobe bit. Before going forward, take off any screen covers or protective glass like this. Power off the phone, then use a heat gun or a hairdryer to heat up the adhesive around the outside edge of the screen. After you've heated it for a while, use your plastic tools to go around the outside edge to open up the screen. You'll want to open it pivoting on the right side, but be careful not to go past about 150 degrees, otherwise you could rip these ribbon cables. Next, grab this 0.6 Y-bit screwdriver and remove the 2 screws holding down the protective plate, covering the 2 ribbon cables. These Y-bit screws tend to strip pretty easily, so make sure you have a good grip before you take them out. Before I go any further, I'm going to need to disconnect the battery. The battery connection is under this plate, which is held down by 3 screws. It's always a good idea to disconnect the battery first whenever you work on electronics so you don't short anything out. The battery's disconnected, so now I can take off the final ribbon cable. This last ribbon cable is under a plate in the top right corner, and there's 5 screws holding it down. The first 3 screws are the same 0Y tip bit, but the other 2 screws require a size 000 Phillips screwdriver. As you take out the 2 screws, you need to be careful that you don't lose this tiny bracket because it can fall off the plate when you pick it up. Now you may have noticed that Apple loves to put tiny screws in their iPhone, so it's important to keep them organized. I like to use these magnetic boxes in this rubber mat to keep track of each step that I take out the screws. These mats are great, but you can also draw boxes on a piece of paper to keep everything organized. With that ribbon cable removed, I now need to take off the proximity sensor on this old screen. There's going to be 4 screws around the outside that are holding it down. As I remove the last screw, I can fold this sensor down in half to see inside of it. It's extremely important that you're careful not to tear the ribbon cable, or else you could lose the ability to use Face ID. On the top of the sensor is a tiny plate that I need to remove. This is also very fragile, and you can avoid damaging it by pulling it straight out when you disconnect it. For this next part, use the flat end of your pry tool and slide underneath the proximity sensor. At the very top is this earpiece, which is held down by adhesive, so it takes a little bit of pressure to get it out. These proximity sensors are exclusively programmed to your iPhone for security purposes, so if it's damaged, you won't be able to have Face ID. And with that, I'm done with my old screen, so now I can set it aside. On the new screen, first peel off any plastic on the back, then grab the proximity sensor for your Face ID. To set it in place, align it over the earpiece slot and press it down. Once the earpiece is set, fold it back over so the 4 screws line up. Before I tighten everything down, I'm going to put in this super tiny metal bracket. This can be kind of hard putting back in, but I found the best way is to line it up and then press it straight in. The bracket's on, so now I'm good to tighten the 4 screws. Having the camera, proximity sensor, and speaker all in one unit makes putting this thing back together a lot easier. I'm going to start with the top proximity sensor, then move to the bottom display cables. Usually the bottom 2 ribbon cables for the display are straight, so you may need to give them a slight bend so they align to the connections. Before you attach the display cables, make sure you reconnect the batteries and put on the plate. Remember that when you put on the plate that covers the proximity sensors to include the tiny bracket. It just slides right over the hole for the screw. Oh hi little guy. I think my 5-year-old son just came in to remind me to test everything on the screen is working before I seal it all down. So before I close it, I'm gonna power it up to test everything out. There's no more crazy flickering on the screen, and I had no problems with the touch sensor. Everything's good, so I'm gonna power it off and put on the waterproof seal, then tighten the bottom 2 screws. This phone had nearly all of its waterproof seal intact, so I didn't need to put the new one on and just tighten it down and put in the SIM card. This screen kit came with a tempered glass protector, so I'm gonna throw that on now. And now we're done. Thanks so much for watching me help my neighbor fix her phone. If this was helpful, check out my other Apple repair videos, and have a great day.